Starting a new business comes with a lot of uncertainty. One minute, you're totally sure of your choices, and the next minute leaves you questioning what you're doing, how you're doing it, and if you're even good enough to be doing it. Needless to say, there's a lot of drama. One strategy to move through this drama quickly is to check with your feelings to see where they're guiding you. Welcome back, friend. I'm Jamie Renee, and this is the Perfection Not Required podcast. The purpose of this show is to pull back the curtain on building a business and show you the strategies, tools, and inner healing that comes with success. In this episode, I chat with my friend and Pod Squad bestie, Heather Love. She's a life coach and host of For the Love of Dharma, which is the podcast she launched last year and which is also how we know each other. Listen in as Heather and I talk about how the feelings we experience in our bodies can help guide us to make decisions that are right for us. Last year, Heather and I met through a podcast course we were both taking. We were randomly assigned to the same accountability group, and we started our podcast just a few months apart. I was a guest on Heather's show, and she was on episode 15 of this podcast. As I've watched her grow and pivot and come into her own during this time, I thought it would be fun to catch up on a whole, Where Are They Now series I'm starting. What came out of this is how Heather's been able to tune into her body and use her feelings to guide the decisions she's making in her business. This conversation picks up with Heather talking about the lessons she's learned when she did an 8-week solo series on her show last summer based around a book that she loved. Let's get into it.
When I look at it now, though, in retrospect, I could have probably done that entire 8-week series in one episode, because I feel like while everything was relevant and good, it was very detailed. And I don't know about you, but when I listen to podcasts, my ADD kicks in a little bit and I'm like all over the place. So to spend 20 minutes talking about compassion to essentially myself, right? So it wasn't to guess. It just gets a little lot, like, how much can you say, right?
Yeah.
And so I loved it and I learned so much, and I learned about the process of doing solo episodes because up until that point, I hadn't really done a lot of them. And so I'm really grateful for that experience. What I did then, though, was because the numbers scared me and how much they dropped, I went all in to guest episodes. And that was all I did for a long time. And so now I recorded, oh my gosh, I think over 40, maybe closer to 50 episodes within about a 6-week period. It was a lot. But I met some really cool people. However, because of that, those episodes are still airing, and I recorded them 6 months ago. So I will not necessarily be doing that again. So I have about 6 weeks left of my current roster of interviews that I recorded 6 months ago, but they're just airing now. And when that's done, I think I'm going to give solo episodes another go. And I'm not going to go solo episodes exclusively. I definitely want to bring in guests also. I'll be a little bit more selective in how I choose those guests. And I can't wait to start talking about all of the things that I've been learning in the last year for my own development. And I just feel like I'm in a much more confident place to be able to speak to things that energize me that I think my audience will resonate with.
Yeah. No, I think, there's so many lessons that we both learned just that first year. And I remember when you put that call out on social media to interview guests and you had 40 or 50, you're like, oh yeah, I just let them all sign up because I just assumed half of them wouldn't show up or would cancel or whatever. And then I think all but one actually ended up coming through.
I had one no-show, and honestly, I had over 80 people say they were interested, and I just knew I couldn't do 80. My show only airs once a week.
Yeah. That's a lot of edits.
But yeah, I thought all these people are going to cancel or no show, and I only had one out of everyone that signed up.
Yeah, that's a lot. And then we tend to go to the other the other end of the spectrum. It's like everything in life where it's like, oh, I don't want to do this, so I'm going to go the complete opposite. And then, with your solo episodes, instead of just saying, oh, well, maybe I'll just not do so many in a row, or take this, it's all lessons learned. It's
Yeah,
just getting out there, having something to edit, and it coming from a place of, okay, this is an experiment. This is learning. This is, how we're moving forward. Are you going to,
absolutely. I think the thing I learned the most, like I actually am so glad I did that because I got really good at interviewing people in a way that I could have never read about or listened to people. Just by having these conversations, I got really good at knowing what questions to ask, how to ask them, and what worked for me, right? Which wouldn't
Mhm.
necessarily work for everyone. So I'm so glad I just like dove headfirst into the fire because there's no other way I could have learned it not that quickly.
Yeah, I get that. Are you going to take a break between seasons, or are you going to take a little bit of a rest, or have you thought about
I
that?
did consider it, but I don't think so. I don't feel like I need one because in reality, I haven't done an episode
Mm,
in
true.
since October of 2022 because that was the last time I interviewed someone.
Yeah.
So, I of course I record an intro and outro every week for my episode, but that's 3 to 5 minutes max. It's not very long.
Yeah.
And so I really haven't done an episode in a long time. And so I think I'm just going to keep going. I'm on, at the time that we're recording this, I'm on episode, I think 61 is the next one coming out. And I haven't taken a break yet, but I don't feel like I need one. And I think it's important to just kind of listen to yourself and know when that time comes. There may be a time where I'm like, okay, I would really like to take a little break. And then I will. But
Yeah.
right now, I think I feel really good about keeping the momentum going.
Yeah. No, that's great. So one of the things when I was listening back to our episode that we previously recorded, because in my mind, this is like where are they now? Because I just think it's so fascinating, like these early years of entrepreneurship where there is so much shifting and so much changing, because the mentors that we tend to see, by the time we see them, by the time the average person sees them, like they've got their shit together. Like they have a consistent offering, a consistent plan, a path that is dependable. And for us, like in these early years of really establishing ourselves, I mean, it's like professional pivoters. I mean, it's like, okay, this, no, this, maybe, this, no, this, yes, and so it's just this process of elimination of going and trying and doing and tweaking. And so one of the things last year, whenever you were talking, you had just finished your jazzercise certification and had started that. And I know, just because we're friends personally, that, that didn't last. And tell me about that and kind of what you took from that experience and how, like, what has replaced that. Kind of tell me about that transition, just so we can kind of close that loop, because I do think it's an interesting journey that you've had.
Yeah. So I decided, oh my gosh, 20 years ago, I decided I wanted to be a jazzercise instructor. I never had the time. And then, I got married, I had kids, I had the corporate job, all the things. When I left my job in 2021, suddenly had a bunch of time on my hands. And I was already in the process of getting my certification as a Dharma coach. But I still felt like I could do this, I could do something else. And it had always been a dream of mine. And so I wanted to pursue it. And it was a really intense process that I think I was not prepared for. I thought I knew what I was doing as a student, and I knew I was following all the instructions and I was doing technique correctly and all of those things. And so I decided to go ahead and move forward with becoming an instructor. I was not prepared for all that was involved. And it didn't take me very long into that process to go, I don't know if this is for me. But I felt like I owed it to myself and owed it to my instructor, who had encouraged me to go through this process and was serving as a mentor for me, to see it through. And I am the best at starting things and not finishing them. And so just finishing the process was a big win for me, because the previous versions of me would have absolutely quit midway. But I felt, and I still think it's okay to quit things. Absolutely, 100%. But in this instance, I felt very strongly that I wanted to see it through, because I didn't know if I was in a place of it just feeling really hard. So I wanted to quit versus this doesn't feel like a good fit for me. And I was in a place that I couldn't really differentiate between the two. So I was like, let me just see it through. So I went ahead, I got certified, and I started teaching on my own. And the longer I did it, which was not very long, it was a couple of months, but the longer I did it, the more I was like, yeah, no, this isn't what I want. I don't like it. I would rather be a student. And it was through that I had the realization that just because I love something and I learn how to do something well doesn't necessarily mean that I need to teach it. Yeah. And that was a huge lesson for me, because I am a professional student of all kinds. I'm always taking classes. I'm always reading books. And I very often go into things with the attitude of, what can I learn so that I can teach other people? Which is great.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that. I can learn things just to learn them. I can be a student and just have that be the end of that road. And so that was such a huge lesson for me. And I felt really good about my decision, because what that did then was it opened up that time and energy, because it really did take way more time and energy than I had anticipated to go through this whole certification process. It allowed me to take a step back and look at my business and say, what is it that I want this to be? Because I had started the podcast right about the same time that I was getting certified. So that was also a whole lot of stress that I wasn't quite prepared for. But it allowed me to take a step back and say, what is it that I really do want? What would light me up? So it gave me the opportunity to really start seeing what was important. And of course, because I'm a student, I started taking other courses and seeing what would fit. I started doing a lot more client calls. And through that process, I realized that my clients, so Dharma in Sanskrit, it means purpose. So your life purpose, your soul's calling, your mission statement, however you want to say it. And so that's what I really help my clients with. But what I was finding is that they kept getting stuck in the day-to-day, the financial aspect of their lives, the relationships, their career, any of these places that they just felt stuck, and they couldn't move past that to get to, what do I want to do with my life? Right. It's like, I can't pay the bills next month. How am I going to live my purpose? Like, that's just not even. And so I started looking for ways.
Sure. Let's talk about that,
Right. And I'm so, because I have found my purpose, I'm really, really passionate about helping others do that. But I understood, because I went through my own journey of needing to get to a place where I felt safe in my body. I started to work out and eat better and get more sleep and meditate and all of these things so that I could regulate my own nervous system. And then I could start to rewire my brain patterns that I had about not being good enough, not being worthy, and not being deserving, and all of these things. So I had been on my own journey to get to my purpose ultimately. And so it was really great for me to take a step back and understand that that is what my clients actually needed. So then I started really diving into, how can I learn this? Who's teaching this? And that's what I ended up doing. Was then I got another certification in integrative change work, which essentially helps me work with people on the most primal level of like getting you to feel safe in your body, safe in your life, safe to do the things that you want to do. Because so many people have this level of, what's the word I'm looking for? They have a blockage where they just can't move past it and they don't know how. So I really help them get in there. And I would have never had the time to do any of that if I would have stuck with jazzercise, which ultimately wasn't making me happy.
Yeah. No, you just said a whole bunch that I want to come back to. Um, the thing I want to circle back to first is whenever you said I was in a place, you talked about not finishing things always. And so the commitment of I was in a place where I didn't know if I was wanting to quit because it was hard or because it really wasn't what was right for me, which I have struggled with as well, because it's one of those things to where we're so used to giving in to just like what our brain tells us, like what, like what the default pattern is, where it's like, oh, this is never going to work. This is stupid. This is not, oh, this is not what you're interested in. This, like these things. And it's hard to differentiate like that voice from, okay, where is that point, So can you like riff a little bit on that? I know that you've had a lot of training and a lot of your certifications and stuff that will address like the subconscious and those sorts of things. So can you talk about kind of that process that happens and how we kind of work through it?
For me specifically on this, it was really about listening to my body and understanding how I wanted to feel. So our brains are big fat liars, and they tell us shit all day long that is actually not true. So I hear people say, just because you think something doesn't mean it's true. And I had to sit down, and I do this with a lot of things now. I actually every morning have a practice that I'll tell you in just a second. But for this specifically, and I had the same thing actually when I was going through my podcast not all that long ago. So I was like, do I want to keep doing it? Do I not? Why do I want, what is it that's making me want to quit? And all of these things. And what it really comes down to is getting in your body and not listening to your head, and just understanding how it is that you want to feel, and then seeing what it is that you can do to make you feel that way. So for me, understanding whether I want to quit something because it's hard or quit something because it's not right for me was not a quick decision. I sat with that for a long time, and I kind of went back and forth, but I really got honest with myself, and I didn't listen to all the crap going on in my head. I was like, how does it make me feel when I'm teaching? How does it make me feel when I'm having to learn a routine? How does it make me feel when my body is really sore and I don't want to keep going, right? And then really understanding what's important. Why did I start in the first place? It's kind of another one.
Yeah.
And I'm really big on, if things aren't fun, change it up. And sometimes that might mean quitting, but sometimes it's just doing something a little bit differently. And so really just getting honest with yourself about those things. I have a practice every morning that I do where I set an intention for the day, but I don't set an intention for what I want to do, because I think that we get so caught up in our to-do lists of these are all the things that I want to get accomplished today, right? The problem with that is that we have no control over a whole lot of our lives. So if you have a list with 10 things on it that you want to accomplish, and God forbid somebody gets into a car accident, well, now your entire to-do list has just gone out the window because you need to go to the hospital because you need to like check on this person or, whatever. There could be a million things that hopefully nobody gets into a car accident. But you know what I'm saying, right? Like there was one time my daughter threw up at school. So I had to like scrap my whole day because I had to go get her and take care of her because she had a fever and like all this stuff, right? So we don't have control over a lot of our lives. But what we can control is how we want to feel about what's happening in our lives. And so I now set an intention for how I want to feel, and I write it down every single morning. And so sometimes that can look like I want to feel productive, but that is different than saying I am going to do these 10 things. I want to be productive can be as simple as taking one step on one project that I'm working on. And so I think that there's such an opportunity for people to look at their lives in a way that they can really embody the feelings of what they want to be, And it's so much more impactful than here's the list of things I did today.
No, it's definitely something that as I'm looking at my to-do list, that I feel like I could benefit from, because especially now that I'm back at corporate, my problem is stopping, because I have these unrealistic expectations on my to-do list, which I think is common for a lot of achieving women, where we think that we're like superwoman and can just get everything done in the exact amount of time that we think we should. And then you're left with like, just keep going and going and going. And it's like, holy shit, like I need a hard stop. I need a stopping point. And I think if I could switch and do something to like that, where it's like you said, making progress on one task towards one project, as long as I'm stepping in that direction of where I want to go, like letting that be enough, and letting that sense of accomplishment really fuel me to go further, if that's what my body tells me at the time. Because a lot of times I just override that because I'm on a mission.
Yeah. And so many women do, which is where people get burnt out and have adrenal fatigue, because you just keep going. And one of the things that I have started to invite my clients to do is almost have like 3 lists. So they've got their to-do list, your traditional, like, I want to, I don't know, start a podcast. I want to organize my files. I want to whatever. And they're usually these big things that have 7,000 steps to them, right? But we put it as one item on our to-do list, right? So what I invite people to do is, okay, make that list, make that huge list with all of your big projects that you want to do. And then let's make a smaller list. And just what is the next smallest step you can take to feel like you've made progress on that reorganizing your files, right? Whether that's buying a filing cabinet if you actually are doing actual files, or just buying a hard drive if it's on your computer. Like, what is the next smallest thing you can do? And then, I don't know about you, but I love checking things off my to-do. It makes me feel really, sometimes I put things on there that I've already done just so I can check them off. But okay, so that's your second list. And then the third list is sort of a nice to have, right? So for me, on that nice to have list is repainting my bathroom. I've been wanting to repaint my bathroom for 2 years. It's still on the list, right? So it's like, I want to do it. Nobody's going to die if it doesn't get done in any kind of timely manner, right? But it's if I have time, when I get to it, whatever. So I always like to have 3 lists. You've got your big vision, but then you break it down into little smaller pieces so that you can actually check those things off. And then you've got the other list of like, someday when I get to it, when I'm really bored, whatever, right?
Yeah. It's funny because I kind of like fluctuate back and forth between like digital planning and paper planning, and I haven't quite found my groove of what 100% works for me. And I think it's just a result of too many options. But like, I know when I do it digitally, I am so much better about actually allowing myself the time to actually complete the task, because I'll like, my task will be publish the podcast, which seems like that's what whenever I write it on my actual like paper to-do list, it's like publish the podcast. Whenever I put it in digital form, it's like, okay, write the description, upload the thing, get all the links, publish the website that it links to, and update the episode graphics. And it's like there's 47 steps to actually get it published. That, if I've got publish my podcast, send my email, write this other email that I've been meaning to write, and then update an Instagram. Like, in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, those 4 things.
But it's not, right? Each of those things is like 10 things. So now you've got 40 things on your list, and nobody can be expected to accomplish 40 things in it, right? So I think getting really clear on understanding, because I'm the same way. I used to publish my podcast. And now I've gotten to like you said, write the description, make the cover art, do all
Right.
the, actually record the intro and then edit the intro. And then, and it's
Yeah.
like each one of those things is a step. And so when you just say publish a podcast, your brain is going to be like, oh, that's like a 10, 15-minute thing. Really, it's like an hour, 2 hours, depending on what's
Right.
happening. Right. So I think just getting really honest with ourselves about what we can accomplish in any given time period is a huge thing. But then also breaking it down into how do I want to feel about what I'm doing versus if I don't do the thing, I'm going to feel like garbage.
Yeah.
But can you still bring the energy to something regardless of whether you actually finish it or not?
Yeah. No, and that's the most important piece. It's always about how you feel. And I always it's such a reminder for me that I have to do that all of the time, to where I'm such a doer, that it's it's like, oh yeah, stop, slow down, feel it, vision it, do all of the things. I want you to tell me about, I know that there was an incident recently with a dog, and when you and your daughter were on a walk, and I was thinking about that this morning whenever I was like, okay, what are we going to talk about? And that was one of the things that came up, and not from okay, here's this sensational whatever, but I want to talk about it from a standpoint of how you were able to implement the tools and the techniques and all of the things that you've been learning over the last year to really deal with the aftermath of this attack from the dog. So if you want to tell people what happened, and then just kind of go into how you were able to use the tools and things that you've learned, because I think that that's such an important piece of, yes, we're learning this so we can share it with other people, but so much of the things that we're taking in, I mean, they do nothing but serve us,
Yeah, absolutely. So it's still an ongoing thing. And after talking with the dog's owners, it may end up going in a legal direction. So I won't get into too many of the specifics, just in case that's how it goes. But generally speaking, my daughter and I were out walking our dog on the street and in our neighborhood, and a dog that was in a yard either got loose, or I'm not even sure. It was originally in its own yard, but came out onto the road and attacked. It went after my dog. And in that process, I was trying to get their dog off my dog. And so I also got injured. The whole experience was really traumatic. And that actually surprised me that I was as shaken as I was. So obviously physical wounds heal. I'm still healing. I still have some injuries. It wasn't all that long ago that it happened, but it took me a couple of days to kind of pull myself together, because I was like, my older daughter, who was not on the walk with us all weekend. So it was a Friday when it happened. And all weekend, she's like, Mom, you act like you're sick, but you're not sick. And it just was, I couldn't get out of it. Like every time I would close my eyes, I would see this dog coming at me, so it was just very traumatic. And I let myself have a couple days. And I think that's really important, is that people allow themselves to feel whatever it is. There's something called spiritual bypassing, and it's where people essentially, they have a feeling and they're like, oh, that's negative, I shouldn't think that. And so they'll talk their way out of it. But the thing that I have learned is that when your body is in a state of dysregulation, cognitive function does not work. So you cannot talk your way out of anything and have it actually have a lasting impact. And so when people tell you to calm down when you're pissed off, that's why that never works. Because you're feeling it in your body.
Yeah.
We think we can think our way out of everything, which is only true once your body is in a state of regulation. And then you can rewire what's happening in your brain, and not a moment sooner. And so I let myself have that time. I had a few days where I literally just laid on the couch and I just couldn't think. And I didn't try to. I didn't really try to make myself feel better in those moments because I just needed to be able to process what had happened. I was genuinely in a state of fight, in the fight or flight. I was literally fighting for my life and for my dog's life. Thankfully, my daughter was not touched. But it takes a little time for all of that to come down out of your body. That night, I literally was still shaking. And so, it's just a matter of allowing yourself to have that feeling. And then a few days later, I did something called EFT tapping, which allowed me to start the process of moving that energy out of my body. And it was huge. And it was just a way to allow it to kind of stop being so stagnant, because it was just this tight, tense energy in me. And so by doing this tapping, I was able to kind of release some of that. I stopped talking about it so much. And that was huge, because the way that our brains work is every time we do something, it creates a neural pathway. And that's how habits are formed. That's how fears are formed. So if you had something happen or if you did something and something happened as a result, it has now made a connection in your brain. And so the next time, if you're doing that thing and something happens, it's just going to keep making that like a thicker and thicker neural pathway. And so when you have something happen or negative, or even when you get in a fight with someone or whatever, the more you talk about it and the more you tell people, the deeper you are ingraining that into your subconscious. And so I knew that's what I was doing, because I had told the story 700 times. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of tired of talking about this, because I don't want this to be my new reality. I don't want to be scared of dogs. Obviously, I have a dog. I don't want to be scared of walking past these people's house. I don't want them to have an impact over what it is that I'm living in my reality. So I stopped talking about it as much. I still had to talk about it a little bit. So those were two of the things, or three, I guess. So I let myself feel it. I did something to move that energy in my body, and that EFT tapping is just one modality. There's so many things that people can do to move stress or anxiety or just stagnant energy that they just don't feel good about. There's so many things. So EFT tapping is just one of them. And then I stopped talking about it so much. And then the last thing I did was I just let myself have a really good cry.
Yeah.
Because that's just emotion that needs to come out, that energy and motion, and it just needs to go somewhere. So I started the process with tapping, and I felt like crying was like the last release that I actually needed. And so it's just been a process and still going through it. The other thing I've been doing, my daughter, the one that was with me, she wasn't hurt, but mentally, it's a thing, right? She's 12. She's already told me, she's like, I never want to walk past that house again. And so being able to check in with her, how are you feeling? And giving her tools to help her work through it has been helpful. So I guess, I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, it does. I mean, it's just one of those, like, I guess I didn't realize that you weren't talking about it, or I wouldn't have brought it up to like rub salt in the wound.
No, that's totally okay. And because what it was basically for 3 days straight. That was the only conversation I was having.
Well,
and so this
especially
is
on a weekend, like it's running through your head. I get all of that.
So no, I don't mind it at all. And like, this is probably the only time today I'll talk about it. So it's fine.
Yeah. No, I knew that you had been able to implement some of the things that you had learned that really helped you in that situation. And honestly, it was more of just like an opportunity for you to showcase some of those things, for other people, because there are ways to process that emotion. And there are it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. Like, it doesn't have to, like, whatever is happening in your body, it's happening. And it's not like you have to understand it or shame it or any of that, but there's tools that are available to work through. And I mean, that was basically the point I was trying to make.
Well, and it's so true. And, so many of the tools I've learned make no sense. If you try to make sense of it, you're going to miss the whole boat on allowing it to work for you.
Yeah.
There's one thing I've shown people, and there's different versions of bilateral stimulation, but essentially you're alternating your right brain and your left brain. And there's different things you can do. One of those things is walking, because when you walk, you alternate stimulating right brain, left brain, right? But think about your right leg, left leg, and so even just things like moving, the other thing about anxiety, which I think I'm going to do a workshop on this, but not all anxiety is rated equal, right? And so my situation, I was in like fight mode. That's like a 10 plus on the anxiety level, right? Because I'm actually fighting for my life versus, is this boy going to call me? I think he's not. What if he doesn't like me? What if he that's probably like a 1 or 2 on the scale of 1 to 10, right? So there's different ways to handle it. And the purpose behind me even saying this is when you're in the higher levels of anxiety, you actually need to move in order to move that anxiety and stress through your body, versus when it's a low level anxiety, kind of just almost an annoyance. And like, you just notice this twinge of like, I don't know, I'm feeling a little weird here. You can do things where you're not moving as much. So you could do some journaling, you could do meditation, you could do those things where you don't have to be active, and it's going to help you immensely versus, I just fought a dog. You're going to tell me to sit down and meditate, kiss my ass. Like, that's not happening, right? Like, I can't stop shaking. So there's just different things you can do depending on where you're at on the scale. And it's not just anxiety. I just say that because it's so pronounced in people. And, so many people experience anxiety for different reasons at different times. So that's really the whole thing. And there are so many things, but when you try to make it logical, it's definitely not going to work.
Yeah, no, I get that. So Heather, this has been fun. Thank you so much for coming back on the show and giving us the updates and all the things that you've just kind of experienced and grown through this past year. If people want to find out more about you, your podcast, your coaching, all of those things, do you want to go ahead and let people know where to find you?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. I always love talking to you. My podcast is called For the Love of Dharma, and Dharma is spelled DHARMA. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. I release an episode every week. And then the best place to connect with me is Instagram. My handle is I am Heather Love. I have a link in bio where you can click to find all of my freebies and how to work with me. It has a link to my podcast there as well. So I would love to hear from you. If you want to DM me, I always love to meet new people.
Thanks so much for tuning into another episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, consider texting this to one friend or hitting that little arrow button to share to your Instagram stories. This thing grows one person at a time. You can find Heather's original episode and all links mentioned in the show notes. And until next time.